have gotten used to, I go back to this word around clarity, central bankers became very, very good at providing clarity.
Yeah.
If you look at the history of how investors have reacted, such attention gets paid to interest rates, what central bankers say, and that sort of became the words they chose and how they said it, allowed investors to build a framework and invest around it. While we can rely on that,
Right.
it is you can get the same level of clarity from the political policy today, not just in the US, but across the world. And the fiscal policy is much more in control of government organizations. And so you have to do a lot of individual work
Right.
and incremental work as an investor if you want to seek clarity. And I think it's going to be good for markets. Why it is going to be good for markets in my mind is we've had sort of a collective viewpoint of where markets are going. And I think there's a bigger dispersion in investors who think where the world is going.
It's interesting that dispersion, I feel like that is a word I'm hearing more and more often in terms of just the variations. And you've really got to kind of do your homework. I want to go back to what you talked a little bit about, aging, longevity, retirement, the democratization of especially the private markets. Is that going to increasingly, whether it's exposure to real estate or other, important for ultimately folks really hitting their targets when it comes to retirement? And what do you want to see in terms of policies?
Absolutely. Great question. So I was just earlier this week at Milken, and that was a big topic. You know, private markets. Before that, I'm on the ICI board, Carol, and that's become a topic there. So this notion of retirement and private markets overall is a big topic. But I would say the three big trends in the retirement space are, in addition to private markets, there is innovation. And innovation is not just investment innovation. There is technological innovation that will play a role for these products to deliver their outcome. And then the last piece is I go back to policy. These markets are highly dependent on where regulatory policy evolves. And I would say the retirement investor is absolutely not participating in private markets today. They're almost like sitting on the sidelines stuck because there's no clarity on the regulatory policy front of how they should access this. And while there is innovation of how to do it, it is not there yet. Going back to real estate, I would say it is probably the first door you have to enter if you want to allow private markets.
Interesting.
And as an investor, it should be really easy to understand.
Why?
Why? Exactly. I would say of all the asset classes, real estate is probably the most different from bonds and stocks. You know, people talk about private equity, people talk about private credit. They are different, but they're not that different. Real estate at the core is different. And so why are we going to do this? It's all about outcomes. So you want to add things that diversify you further. So real estate, makes the first logical argument, and academic literature even says that. It's you got to pick the most diversifying asset first. So that one makes sense. Two, it is deeply global, and it is wide and deep. Real estate exists all across the world. You know, we have REIT markets. And so the second thing you want to have is, if you want to do it in retirement portfolios, you want to have public and private proxies for doing something. Real estate is one of those asset classes. You could buy direct, or you could do REITs. You could buy bonds, or you could do equity. It is a complete 360 asset class. And at the end of the day, the saver, which is really mom and pops who are saving for retirement, want to have an asset class that's deep, and you can implement your views across the world in a good way. That's probably the best reason I would argue.
You know, it's funny, at Milken, and one of the guests, I said, you know, is there going to be a period where, like, we don't really care about the public markets anymore? And, like, they looked at me like I was black, you know, what are you saying? But it just increasingly, the shift, private markets has certainly been a topic, as you know, at Milken for a long time, whether it's real estate, like pick your thing. And I just wonder, you know, how are the majority of investors, 401ks, like your mom and pop, what they are missing out on?
So I would say what they're really missing on is having access to all asset classes. And as you said, they're largely in publics, but public will have to be the core of the portfolio. You know, you need to manage liquidity in these portfolios, and it is by far the biggest component of market access today is in public markets.
Just got about 30 seconds left here. Real quickly, Secretary Bessent kicked off Milken talking about American exceptionalism, basically best place for the U.S. How do you see it? Because you look at real estate from a global perspective.
So here's what I would say. I think...
Just quickly.
Yes, just quickly. America will remain exceptional in technology, not sure about every sector of the economy.